So here's what I think will happen to the boundary waters. That's what it's like now. At some point in a few decades it will die and then it will come back as an oak savanna. This is Cedar Creek Science Reserve, about 40 miles north of the Twin Cities. So savannas, this again is Cedar Creek. There are some places that have deeper silty soils might still have forest, but it would be more that type of forest. Here are some wildlife winners and losers. You can't make a lynx live in an oak savanna. Just won't do it. You can talk to it all you want. Black-backed woodpeckers aren't going to live in an oak savanna. Boreal owl, no way. And there's no way moose are going to live in an oak savanna. Wolves, on the other hand, will do just fine. Because when the moose go, the deer will fill that niche, and wolves can eat deer. In fact, wolves would prefer deer because they're so much easier to kill than a moose. And the wolf itself is less likely to be killed during the transaction because one kick of a moose can break the skull of a wolf. So deer are a lot easier to take down as a food source. So wolves will do just fine. They don't care about the climate. All they care about is whether there's deer or moose available to eat. But moose do care about the climate. They get heat stroke in the winter at about 35 or 40 degrees. In the summer, they get heat stroke at 70 degrees.
And they need wetlands, too.
Yeah, during heat waves in the summer, they go to the edge of a swamp and they lay down in that damp soil. And they stay there as long as the heat wave lasts. But if it's hot all summer, then they don't get anything to eat and they die. They just generate too much heat if they eat anything during those heat waves because digestion is a heat evolving process. So wildlife will change when the vegetation changes because wildlife depends on the vegetation. More savannas in the future. Maybe more buckthorn. This is buckthorn up in northern Minnesota, growing right on the Canadian Shield, right on the rock, for people who think it can't do that. It could, and the question is, will we end up with a savanna with native species or a bunch of exotic plant species? This is one unique place that I found 90 miles west of here near the town of Kandiyohi. You get on Highway 12 and you go west, and if you don't blink, you see this little town of Kandiyohi. A couple miles south of that is the Kandiyohi elm forest, which is a real ecological gem. We think it's been there for 11,000 years. And it's American elm and rock elm and red elm. Elm disease has been there for the last 40 years, has only killed a handful of trees. So that's amazing. The other thing is it's way out there on the edge of the prairie forest border in an area with a lot of droughts. And it has basswood, not only the elms, but basswood, Kentucky coffee tree, hackberry, and bur oak. And all of those tree species grow in Kansas. So if we get the climate of Kansas, at least in areas with deep, silty loam soil, we can still have this kind of forest. Rocky areas and sandy areas, though, forget about forest. In a warm climate, you're not going to grow forest on rock or on sand. In a cold climate, yes, not in a warm climate. So questions?
The acceptance of this information, there's a political element to it.
Yeah.
What are the strongest political forces against you?
The political forces against global warming is the coal and oil industry. The people who paid for a lot of the campaigns in this last election. They're just so powerful that it's hard. They can convince people that other things are true, other than what actually is true. And we have such a poor level of scientific literacy in this country that it's easy to dupe people. We used to be #1 in science education in the world, and we're now number 25 among countries in the world, and we're plummeting rapidly. And at the University of Minnesota, we hardly notice that because there's more and more people in the country, and so we just keep getting more selective, and we're only taking the top 1%. For graduate students, I'm only taking like the top 100% of students in the country. So I'm still getting really good students, and so I don't see this big drop in the average scientific literacy that's occurring. I didn't show a lot of the impacts on lakes, but recently throughout Canada, in the boreal forest, say in central Ontario, hundreds of miles north of the border, they've been sampling water quality and there's more phosphorus in the lakes. And that's because the climate is warmer and the chemical equations that govern the state of phosphorus in a lake, whether it's in the sediment or whether it becomes suspended back in the water, are temperature dependent. So as we warm up lakes, phosphorus that's been going down in the sediment for thousands of years will come back into suspension. With regard to food supply, I think it's just a matter of time until a drought like hit Russia last year happens to hit 2 of the major food producing areas in the world at once, and then there will be a food shortage for everybody immediately. I can't tell you when that will happen, but with the increasing drought frequency caused by global warming, it will eventually happen, and food prices will go sky high. And of course, in the United States, we'll be fine.
Of course.
But you know, everybody else in the world may not be. And so, you know, I think the carrying capacity of the world for people will go down because we won't be able to shift fast enough, and the climate will not be the friendly climate that it's been in the last.
When you will run out of water and they can't feed the breakfast
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, wheat will shift further north, definitely. Yeah. It'll shift hundreds of miles further north, just like everything else. Of course,
Nobody has an answer.
no, not an exact answer. We know in general what will happen, but not an exact
It
answer.
can only go downhill.
Probably, yeah.
So what do you think of the prospects of this group of scientists that are trying to become more politically active?
Well,
Do they have a chance of?
Well,
making,
ultimately,
you know,
the prospects are very good because the truth always wins in the end. You can only fool people for so long, right? And Abraham Lincoln figured that out a long time ago. So yeah, we'll eventually prevail and join the rest of the world.